Okay, so yesterday I started giving some instruction on Anapanasati, and I managed to make it halfway through, which is not bad. Sometimes I'm able to go through all of it as an overview, and sometimes, one could take just Anapanasati and easily do a 10-day retreat on that, but it's helpful to get these different angles, different perspectives on the practice and on the tools for practice. And I must admit, I'm not following through on any consistency in themes, but it's whatever is popping up for me at the time, which giving a talk at 4 o'clock in the morning, I think that's good enough. So it's I wasn't quite sure how I was going to work for giving a talk this early. Usually, my mornings, I really enjoy sitting quietly, and so talking first thing in the morning is really not what I'm used to, not my preference. It seems to be working, and I get up earlier and do some exercises, and it's actually quite delightful. And I've been pretty good at not jet lag has not really been a feature. I've adjusted pretty quickly to the differences in time zones. But anyway, did about the first half of the Anapanasati Sutta. So when the Buddha has the mindfulness of breathing divided into the 4 foundations of mindfulness, so 4 sections, with each section having 4 parts to it. Body, 4 on feelings, 4 on Dhammas, mind objects. So I'll move on to the next section, which is on the mind. And I think one of the things when we consider the and in the perspective of this development of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, when the Buddha it gives instructions in the in the Satipatthana Sutta, it's more like the mood of the mind, or the overall content of the mind, not in its gritty detail, but more in its sort of overall mood, like just knowing the mind that has greed as a mind with greed, knowing the mind without greed as a mind without greed, knowing the mind with hatred as knowing the mind with hatred, knowing the mind without hatred. So it's more like the mood of the mind, the content of the mind, getting that overall sense, oh, this is what the mind is. And then they again, an overall mood, a sense of knowing the expanded mind is expanded, knowing the contracted mind is contracted, knowing the concentrated mind is concentrated, knowing the mind that isn't concentrated is not concentrated. Sort of like the general mood feeling, knowing the liberated mind is liberated, knowing the not liberated mind is not liberated. You know what it is, you know what it isn't. It's not. You're getting a good sense of the mind, and certainly with the say the body and feelings preceding it, then from a Buddhist perspective, you have 6 senses, and so eye, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind itself. And so that, especially in terms of mental development and development of increasingly a refined tool for understanding the nature of our being and the nature of the world around us, it's like withdrawing the primary attention mode away from the external senses and coming back into the mind base itself, the heart itself. And that's something, especially in the English language, when we say mind, what we're using in Pali is citta, and citta is not the cognitive functions completely, it's not the intellectual functions completely, it is more like the heart base. And oftentimes it's just written as sort of mind/heart because it encompasses everything. And certainly in Thailand, the teachers would always, when you say, well, where is the citta? What is the citta? And you always point to your heart base. There's a circumstance that Ajahn Sumedho had, where he accompanied Ajahn Chah and another senior disciple of Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mahamon. They went up to pay respects to and to visit with Ajahn Sumedho's preceptor, who lived in the northern part of the northeast Mongkai. But then they went around and paid respects to various forest masters, forest teachers, and one of them was Luang Por Pasanno. It was one of the early disciples of Ajahn Mun. He was a bit older when he took ordination, so he was quite elderly at the time that they went to visit, and they chatted and talked, and Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Mahamon seemed to be having a great time with him, but Luang Por Pasanno, being more elderly, and his dialect was pretty thick. Ajahn Sumedho couldn't keep up with the dialect, and they were all from Ubon, and so it was very much in the vernacular, the conversation, and Ajahn Sumedho couldn't keep up, and then added to that problem of the dialect, Luang Por Khao had a kind of a mouthful of betel nut, so it was very difficult and impossible to understand, even though, say, Ajahn Chah and Mahamon seemed to be really delighting in this Dhamma conversation that they were having. And so it went on for quite a while, and then they leave, and Ajahn Sumedho, being the junior monk, let the other senior monks leave Luang Por Khao's presence ahead of him, and he was turning to follow them and leave. And Luang Por Khao, who was elderly, he kind of leaped up really quickly, really spryly, and came over to Ajahn Sumedho and very kindly, very compassionately just pointed to his heart and just said, "It's all here. It's all here." And that sense of, he probably knew very well that Sumedho wasn't following the details, but for him, that wasn't the most important part. It was the heart, and some clarity, some stillness, ease within the heart, and that is in order to, and that's the first step in this tetrad, is Citta Patti Sangveti, experiencing the mind, experiencing the heart, I breathe in, experiencing the mind, the heart, the citta, I breathe out. And it's just that word experiencing from the Pali Patti Sangveti, and the root is veti, which is like the same word as Vedana, and from Vedana, feeling. Patti and Sang are amplifiers, so that maybe feeling fully. The mind, I breathe in, feeling fully, the mind, I breathe out. Or Jeff translates it as sensitive to. So sensitive to the citta, breathe in, sensitive to the citta, I breathe out. However, we're getting that feeling for bringing attention back into the heart base, and recognizing that, of course, the nature of the mind is to go out following impressions, following stimulus that is there from the senses, the kind of internal pushes and pulls of likes and dislikes, but that, other than going to the mind ends, coming back to the mind source, so that experiencing the mind, I breathe in, experiencing the citta, I breathe out. And it's just, it's not that one doesn't know or recognize or acknowledge the movement of the mind, but that's not what is this point, in this cultivation of the meditation. one is returning to the source and experiencing the mind, allowing that to, allowing it to shine forth. And of course, the reality is in its movement, it'll move to things that are not so useful, not so beneficial, not so in line with kind of the clarity of the citta. And that's what the next step, the abhipamodayan, is usually translated as gladdening the mind, which is it's a good translation. It's pamod, delight. So abhipamodayan is it. Abhi is like an amplifier. So gladdening, delighting the mind. Breathes in, one breathes out, and this is, very consciously turning to because the nature of the mind is to know, is to recognize, but what do we give our primary focus to? There's the whole range of possibilities of experience, and what we tend to end up doing is getting caught up in distractions or getting caught up in negative perceptions. That is a psychological, I say, like a documented psychological reality. Negativity bias. That's we tend to be drawn more easily to the negative than to the positive. And that's think of the way the news cycles function, negativity, social media, a lot of negativity. That's what gets gets attention. And is it useful? Is it beneficial? Is it actually preferable in terms of our experience as a human being? I would say no. And so we have to make a conscious effort, conscious attention to lift up a quality of gladdening the mind. And of course, there's so many ways of doing that. And, sometimes you're going to use your discursive faculty of the mind. Sometimes it's just a nudging, a gentle nudging of attention. But the main thing is, what is the feeling? What is the experience? And have to attend to the experience of gladdening. And this is where, of course, depending on our own temperament, it could be an object of faith, like say Buddha Dhamma Sangha. It could be a recollection of the say the good that we have done, generosity, virtue. Those are classic meditation techniques. They're called the recollections, anusati, buddhanusati, dhammanusati, sanghanusati, anusati, silanusati. So that's a conscious directing of the mind to recollect and remember those wholesome things that do brighten the mind. They're important directing the mind is through cultivation of loving kindness. And the metta bhavana, the mindful, the meditations on loving kindness. And this is, of course, it could be a meditation in and of itself, but it can also, it forms a really important base for like the next step in the Anapanasati Sutta is samadhaham. So the settling the mind, I breathe in, settling the mind, I breathe out, or concentrating the mind, I breathe in, concentrating the mind, I breathe out. And that settling, composing, requires a positive energy, a positive feeling, and loving kindness is very, say, directly and viscerally pleasing to the heart. So that very conscious, well-wishing, and loving kindness is not a just loving everything, but it's wishing well, that sense of a kindness, a kindly feeling toward ourselves and toward others. And one of the, and sometimes you use phrases to trigger the feeling, or to elicit the actual feeling or emotion, and it's really skillful. Sometimes, it's a nice idea to have thoughts of loving kindness, having the mind of metta, but we do need to have some tools to elicit that and to kind of sustain it so that it gains some momentum in the mind, so that quality of say phrases that I found useful: be well, be peaceful, come to me. Difficulties come to me. May no problems come to me. May I always meet with spiritual success. Have the patience, courage, standing and determination to meet and overcome inevitable difficulties and problems in life. May I always meet them with kindness and compassion. May I virtue and integrity. May I meet them with mindfulness and wisdom. So it's like this well-wishing for oneself, and it's important that we begin with ourselves, kind to oneself. So this quality of metta, and then it can be directed to one's teachers, one's parents, people who one is close to, people who one is they're more, a bit more distant in terms of relationship, or those who are neutral, and even to those who are our, say, adversary, or we don't have a good relationship with. But you usually save those for last, but in particular, for the meditation and for the cultivation of the aspect of mind, setting the tone of the mind, the feeling and mood of the mind, so that it is appropriate for concentration. And it really is a bridge, like that quality of kindness, concern, wishing. It is a bridge to settling and composing. It's not, not even thinking about the social benefits of kindness and compassion, but just on a very practical level of meditation, settling the mind, approaching the mind with kindness it's just so necessary. And the mind on this quality of ease and well-being, and it settles easily. It can't be this sort of pushed into submission. It can't be, you can't just bear down more so that it settles. You can't just, you can't force it. So it is a kindness to oneself just to lift up that quality of metta. And it has that gladdens the mind, it delights the mind, it brings an ease to the mind. There is a well-wishing there. One's doing that as one breathes in, as one breathes out, using the breath as a vehicle for easing and settling and soothing the whole body-mind process. And lo and behold, one starts to feel more peaceful. That samadhi, that samadhi experience is kind of the degree of settling that we experience, or samadhi that we experience, it's in direct proportion to the well-wishing and the way that we glad and ease the mind. So it works together, and so that's like when you're sitting in meditation and you're using the breath as a vehicle, you really do want to pay attention to the aspects of the breath and not just the physical breath, but the experience of the breath, the aspects that are easeful. Like as we're sitting and say breathing in, breathing out, then allowing attention to be drawn to that which is easeful, that which is bright, and because there's the nature of the mind is there's going to be a way of experience, and that we can be again drawn to because there's an array of experience, then we can be drawn to the negative or the confusing, and have doubt about it, or have uncertainty about it, or just get confused. But the nature of attention is that you can attend selectively, and to attend to that which is conducive to clarity, to well-being, to ease, to brightening. You can do that. And it is preferable to do that rather than paying attention and giving importance to, all the things that do lead to agitation or restlessness or distraction. And, there's plenty of those options around. But to actually attend to that sense of what is conducive to gladdening, what is conducive to settling, what is conducive to, in the last, Vimochayan, to liberating the mind, releasing the mind. And that release is invariably a release from the various distractions, hindrances that are an obstacle to the composure of the mind. That sense of composure is so it is there, or the possibility is there all the time, and we tend to skip over it and get caught by what is distracting and entangling. So to releasing the mind, sort of like, and that's where it's like releasing the mind from classically releasing from the five hindrances, releasing the mind, liberating the mind. This is not talking about some final liberation of arahantship. This is a liberating the mind from the coarser aspects that tend to dull the mind and dull mindfulness, dull clarity. The sense desire, that attraction to the senses, the gratification of a pleasurable sense object, even if it's just a memory, it's still an object of sense desire. And we can be sitting cross-legged and in a meditation hall or in a quiet place, our minds can be obsessed with the next distraction, or fantasizing about something in the past, but it's still sense desire. The aversion, ill will, anger, those are just being willing to release the mind. We can have all sorts of logic and rational arguments for why we should be upset at something, somebody, ourselves, the world, and so what? You're still miserable, and even if you're right, it's just not worth it. And this is giving oneself a gift. to liberate the mind, release the mind from its aspects that leave it bound by the unwholesome, the unskillful, the negative. Dullness and sloth and torpor, those are qualities of mind that are sometimes it's hard to bring up energy, but again, it's just sort of you realize you've got a choice. You can sit there just dull and collapsing in on yourself, or you can lift up energy, brighten them on. And sometimes just doing that as an act of will or as an act of mind is really hard to do. So getting up, rather than sitting there in dullness, going and doing meditation, sitting meditation. It's just the benefit of meditation doesn't come from how long you sit, it comes from how well one is able to maintain mindfulness and clear awareness. That is the more important part. And versus the Ajahn Chah was once asked about, the benefits of sitting for long periods of time, and Ajahn Chah immediately said, well, you have to look at the quality of sitting. Chickens sit on a nest for long periods of time, but I don't see many enlightened chickens. So it's so even if we've make the commitment and are perfecting our ability to sit, you need to be bringing mindfulness and awareness, clear comprehension, continuity of knowing, and releasing the mind from from the hindrances, from those things that do entangle, and that, and that the five hindrances: sense desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness, worry. When the mind is caught in its restlessness and worry, there's always something to worry about. The feeling is sort of, gosh, if somebody, this is really worrisome, this is really worthy of concern, this is really, somebody better do it. So one volunteers to be sit there anxious and fretting about whatever, restlessly agitated, and you realize, well, I don't need to volunteer for that duty anymore. I can turn my attention to just being peaceful, being clear, being settled. It's just so much more satisfying. The same with doubt, same with that kind of wavering of the mind, being caught up in uncertainty. Should I do this? Should I not do that? How should I do it? And it's just, and this is where like mindfulness of the body is really helpful, because sometimes doubt and uncertainty are, there's lots of, pretty much everything is, worthy of doubt and concern. And how do you know for sure? And on the mental level, one really can't, because there's too many possibilities. But and to be more aware of that, what does it feel like in the body, and how do we release, let's say, the mind from it, and the body, just the breathing in, breathing out, releasing the mind. Vipmo chayang chittang, that sense of, and this is a training. In terms of this, Anapanasati Sutta, other than the first two steps of knowing the in-breath, knowing the out-breath, then breathing in long, breathing out long, breathing in short, breathing out short. Other than those first two steps, all the rest of the steps in the mindfulness of breathing discourse that the Buddha gives, the operative verb is sikkati, which means training. So, training thus, I shall breathe in, should breathe out, concentrating the mind, or composing the mind, settling the mind. Training thus, I shall breathe in, liberating the mind. I shall breathe out, releasing the mind, just vimochayam chitta. So that sense of training, it isn't that one all of a sudden decides to do it and then you make, it should be there. You have to train, and to training, this word training, sikkati, has a range of meanings, so that training, educating, learning, educating ourselves, breathing in, releasing the mind, educating, learning, training, studying. So that sense of because this is how we learn, is by doing it. So each in-breath, each out-breath, we have the opportunity for experiencing the mind, gladdening the mind, settling the mind, releasing the mind. And that's, as we breathe in and breathe out, it's that attending to the physical experience, in that sense, there was using that rhythm or experience of the breath coming in and going out, but then it's attending in a particular way with the mind base as its frame, of reference. And that sense of, and of course, as the attention becomes more interesting and more pleasing, the body tends to drop away. The body becomes very ease. It experiences a lot of ease, energy. I mean, that's what the piti is kind of an exhilaration and energy in that feeling section. And in the mind section, the citta section, attention is becoming more around that heart base of how we experience. So that releasing and settling are the kind of the mode of operation, and and we're saying instructions or descriptions that say that the Buddha gives of jhana. The primary, even before the mind really gets settled, there is a kind of a settling back into a solitude of the mind. In the Pali, it's sort of viviche wakame, vivicha akusalehi dhamme. So secluded from sensuality, secluded from unwholesome states, and that is that releasing or that settling and releasing of the mind within itself, and the external movement of mind, it's just not so important. It's not that one is negating it or pushing it away or just doesn't want to deal with it. It's more one is secluded from that outgoing pull. And the experience of the heart on its own is much more satisfying. And that's where the mind, the heart-based, the citta, experiences this ease and composure and release. And that, so it's like, it's giving oneself a gift. And so often we're kind of hesitant to be generous to ourselves. Sometimes we're a bit embarrassed even to do that. But when it comes to matters of the heart and the refinement of our internal world, you want to be willing to give that gift and not to overlook oneself. And to allow the heart to settle and allow that sense of seclusion or settling that we wake up, sense of solitude, where there's an another aspect of solitude is a certain, in order to experience a solitude, an internal solitude, one has to be independent and to delight in that independence rather than a constant going out for affirmation or stimulation. There's a contentment to be settled. There's a contentment to experience release, so that we're very consciously using the breath as a vehicle for experiencing these more satisfying aspects of our being, and it has to be to consciously direct our attention and do it with this balanced sense of not being too obsessed, too tight about it, or being too sloppy and lackadaisical about it. You can keep plugging into that each in-breath, each out-breath. So get very far today. I was going to wrap up the Anapana, but this is what comes out, and just offer it for reflection and to just encourage everybody to explore the possibilities of the peaceful heart. I'll leave that for reflection.